Sure. So I'm Kevin, aka Sylvermyst in the chat. Um, I was on the original Claw development team. I started at Monolith as a programmer way back in the day. That was 27 years ago, and purely as a means to an end to get into game design, which is what I always wanted to do since I was a kid. But I got a computer science programming degree mostly because my folks didn't really understand games, and they kind of said, hey, in case your whole games passion doesn't work out, why don't you get a real skill? Something we understand.
Yeah,
something
that's usually how it goes.
Yeah, right. Something marketable. And so I'm like, that's fine. I like tech. I like computers. Programming is a perfect fit for me. So started at Monolith as a programmer, purely as a means to an end. So I did that for about 5 or 6 years. But while I was programming there, I was also contributing to game design. And on Claw, all I did was game design. So I worked on some of the levels. I did all of the bosses, and it was my first real production video game that went out to tons and tons of players. And this was at a time. So I have a couple funny stories about Claw, but I can tell them later. And since then, I've gone on to other companies. I designed Dungeon Siege 2, which was a party-based RPG, and Tron 2.0. I worked on that at Monolith, which is a Monolith's first-person shooter. And I've done console games and mobile games and casual games since then. And I just started a new company recently to do really interesting blockchain games. So that should be exciting.
All right.
So that's kind of my intro. So thanks. And you asked, what was the last time I saw a speedrun? I think your speedrun was one of the last ones I saw, and it's been a while.
It's been a while, like a couple years?
Yeah.
All right, well, there's a couple new strats. I'm not going to get into the strats, though. We're going to just focus on the Claw stories first of all. All right. So I'm going to ask the first question, and then I'm also going to start the run at the same time. So it's been 25 years since Claw released. And if you flash back to 1997, like Claw just came out, how do you feel about the final product that you're putting out there?
I feel pretty good. We felt pretty good about it because, there wasn't really a lot of competition that we saw in the high quality side scroller space. There was Claw and I think Epic's Jazz Jackrabbit was the only other real competition, and we were toe to toe with them. I felt like the characters in Claw were a little bit more lovable, a little bit more relatable, a little bit more cool. Plus, we had the cinematics. I did lose some sleep over the launch of Claw because there was one coin in level 2 that you couldn't reach, even with the power-up, and I wanted to move it. I'm like, oh, we got to bring that down because the power-up runs out before you get to it. This is before any tricks or exploits or strats.
Coin.
Yeah, and I literally lost sleep over that. Meanwhile, the team was like, yeah, but everything is stable. We have to go through testing again. We need to get this game out there. So unfortunately, and this is also before the land of we'll patch it, right? Like this is way before all that. So we released it with that coin missing. You couldn't get it perfect, and it just killed me. But that was kind of learning how early game development worked before you could patch things. Later we patched it. Finally, yeah. I was able to convince folks to do that, but back in the day it was rough for me. It was like, how can you ship a game where you can't get perfect on every level?
Yeah, there was a couple levels like that. Did you know about all the levels that had some problems, or just the level 2 one?
I think I knew about all of them, but the level 2 was the obvious one. I'm like, everybody's gonna see that. But kind of the idea was we had a date that we were targeting, and we needed to get the game out, and we couldn't just keep holding it for small changes like that.
Music is still way too loud. Okay, hold up.
I have it muted, so I can't tell. But other
this
people
should be
can't do
better,
that.
right? I'm trying to mix everything together here so that we can hear the sounds properly.
If you guys didn't hear anything and need us to repeat something, just say the word in chat.
Yeah, so these days, I mean, you did send some patches out later, but you didn't fix the levels.
Not all of
that
them
could
got
be
fixed.
completed.
Yeah, which means some of them were not known to the team.
Yeah, well, today with the new patch we got every level fixed so that it's possible to get 100% on all the levels. So
That's awesome.
I guess
The
at
other thing
least-
that was missing is a perfect. You know, I wanted to have a really nice perfect sequence at the end of each level. I think remind me, is there something there?
Yeah, there is a perfect screen with a +1 life, but it's minimalistic.
Yeah. I wanted there to be a really big perfect, but you can't put in a big, huge, perfect fanfare and then have levels that you can't get them. So that was, I think, the consideration there.
Yeah. Now, if you fast forward back to 2022, 25 years later, how do you feel about the product now compared to 25 years back?
I mean, I think I'm just amazed that there are still people, that there's still, you know, an audience for it, that there's still people like you, and I remember when I first found out about the Claw Discord, I was like, no way, there's still a group of enthusiasts playing Claw. That's amazing. And one of my other games that I worked on, Monolith 2, is called Grunts, and they have a Discord, and people are actually still building levels for that because the map editor was released with it. So it just amazes me that so many people are still playing these games. I mean, you know, of course I'm biased, but I still think they're great, and I think that Claw in particular still holds up today by, you know, the graphic, the look and feel standards. I mean, platformers have come a long way, and you know, there's a lot of cool stuff happening, but you know, I think Claw holds its own today against some of the other 2D side-scroller platforms and all the retro pixel art 8-bit and 16-bit graphics you see out there.
Yeah, I always say that the way Claw looks, you could release it today exactly as it is, as an indie game, and it would be well received, and
I think so too.
people will love it.
Yeah.
But because it's so old, everybody forgot about it.
Right. Yeah, we need to remake it. But Monolith still has owns the IP for this, which is why, you know, a lot of people have asked me over the years, like, hey, can we release a new Claw game? Are you gonna make a new Claw game? And a lot of the reason why the answer is I don't know, or not in the plans, is because Monolith owns the IP for this, and evidently it's not even super simple. According to someone in your Discord who went and did a little research on it, the IP got passed around to a couple of different companies. It's not even clear who has 100% of the rights right now. I think it's Warner. I mean, I'm pretty sure Warner Brothers could figure it out, but they would have to have incentive or desire or reason to do that.
Yeah, they would have to go through a few documents, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And Warner have a reputation for being lazy about that.
I mean, if they saw a financial opportunity in it, I'm sure they would. Like if someone said, hey, we want to buy the license from you, they would figure it out, but I don't know.
Yeah, so you designed Omar among other bosses, of course, so is there anything you would change about the Omar fight right
Oh
today?
my gosh, yes. Yeah, so that's a perfect segue into the story, and it's on my website. So apologies if any of you guys have already read it. But you know, when the game was getting about midway through production or so, you know, and I'm playing it, so I'm talking to the level designers, and I said, guys, the game is way too hard. And they're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? It's great. I said, there are death spikes all over the first level. And they kill you in one shot. And I mean, there really shouldn't be... The game shouldn't be that punishing if you want, millions, hundreds of millions of players to play this game. And the level designers thought I was crazy, and they said, I mean, if you want to make a kids game out of this, sure, but we think it's actually pretty good. And so I'm like, guys, tone down the difficulty. You really got to tone it down. So begrudgingly, the level designers toned down the difficulty across all of the levels. And then they complaining the whole time that like this is a kids game now. And I think that you can just see from how hard it is even now, you can imagine how hard it must have been before they did that. So that was funny. So in that way, I was on the let's make the game more accessible side of the fence. Then when it came to Omar, this was kind of, my first production game. So I was of the opinion that a final boss should be challenging and really satisfying if you beat it. So yeah, it was really, really hard. And if I could go back and redesign it, I would not have made it quite so challenging with the pixel perfect jumps and things. I remember Jason Hall came into my office and said, Lambert, I want to see you beat Omar right now. Do it. I prove to me that you can do it. And I'm like, all right. So I did it, but it took me like 25 or 30 minutes with a couple of attempts. And man,
he also had double the health on 1.0 if I remember correctly.
Yeah. It was mainly the pixel perfect jumps up on the second higher level
phase.
Yeah, the second phase, that was brutal, and I would definitely change that. I would still make it fun and interesting mechanics, but I wouldn't make it quite so hard.
So one question a lot of people have been wondering about Omar, because you can see it in the cutscene right after, but why doesn't Omar use his sword in the fight?
That's a good question. Because he has one in the cutscene. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have a good answer to that.
So even though you had you can see it on the sprite that Omar has the sword, but you never thought about using it at some point in the fight?
I mean, and I'm trying to think back 26, 27 years, or what was the thought process there. I'm trying to remember do you recall what's his attack in the second phase? Is he use his fists?
No, his attack in the second phase is the magic balls.
The balls which come from his sword?
No, he shoots them with his hands.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just not sure there was an opportunity to use the sword in that fight. The way that we had the mechanics designed for it. But now that you say that,
Omar's ball.
Yeah, now that you say that, it feels like we totally should have.
Yeah,
given him some use for the sword.
It's a little bit like Ganondorf in Smash Bros. He used to have the sword, but he didn't use it in the earlier games.
Right.
But they showed off the sword when he was doing like victory animations.
Mm-hmm.
But if he was just in the regular fight, he would never use the sword. And then people were like, "Oh my God, Ganondorf is so strong. He doesn't need the sword. He just has it for swag."
Right, right. I mean, that's the answer I could have given you. I was just like, "Come on, Omar he's a very powerful being. He doesn't need the sword." But I think it was just more of an oversight, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fine. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
So I got another question lined up. But
What's your favorite level?
My favorite level? It's this one.
This was also my favorite level.
Well, actually, all of the levels are my favorite levels. It's just that when somebody asks me this question, I always answer this one to answer about the one that I'm currently playing.
You're currently on. That's great.
So it's always the right answer.
Yeah. I like the colors in this level.
Yeah. Among all the reviews say that the color palettes in level 3 are great.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you had to design Omar as a playable character, how would you make him? How would you go about it?
Well, he's pretty similar to Claw in that he's got magic, he's got melee. I would probably not give him a ranged weapon because I recall he's more about. I mean, I guess he's got magic, so we can use that for his ranged attacks. But I wouldn't give him a gun. I don't think it really suits him, if I recall.
Yeah, he doesn't really look like a gun guy.
Yeah. I don't know. Thinking about mechanics, that would be interesting. Like why you would want to play him. You know, this is probably more for Catherine. If the player were Catherine, I'd want to give her a double jump. I love double jumps in platform games. I think they're super cool, and it makes the level design really interesting. So you'd have to redesign some levels probably because that would break a lot of the levels as they exist today. But you would make dedicated levels for that. Give them a double jump. Hey, he's a little big for a double jump. I think Catherine would fit better for that mechanic, but I mean, I would probably do it anyways just because I love double jumps so much. And if we said let's make Omar the first playable character, I would be like, all right, we're giving him a double jump, and let's make some levels that really make that interesting.
Yeah, ironically, Claw also has a double jump in this game. Yes. But you have to use dynamite.
Yeah, right. I mean, a natural double jump. Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, Catherine would be an interesting playable character with the spin jump. And you know, it's actually something I've been thinking about because I'm currently writing the story script for a Claw sequel. And in the story, I have in mind that both Catherine and Omar would be playable characters.
There you go. So yeah, I would probably give Catherine a double jump, and I would probably give one of them a down attack, so that if you jump up and attack downward on someone, you can bounce off of them.
A little bit like a finisher move.
Yeah, finisher move, but also you could use that for interesting platforming mechanics. You know, you could have a sequence that's like just all water or spikes, and there are little crabs or enemies down there, and you have to jump across them like Shovel Knight style.
Yeah, Shovel Knight is really good in that kind of design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I was working on the design for a Claw sequel. It was going to be a 3D sequel though, so it was going to be inspired by games like Mario 64 was the inspiration for where we were headed with Claw 3D.
Well, at that point in time, was anything not inspired by Mario 64? It was like the pivotal game of that decade.
Right, but look how few games out there even held a candle to it. Very few.
Yep.
From that era. It wasn't until games like the rare games like Banjo-Kazooie and stuff came out that you got some really great 3D platformers after Mario 64. But yeah, we were gonna have Claw 3D, and he was going to get shape-shifting powers. So he was going to be able to. First, they were not going to be controllable, you would have to something would have to trigger them based on the level design, and
Like a
Claw would
power-up.
transform into right like a power up, and Claw would transform into a little kitten and a big bruiser, a big slow guy who could break walls and stone, and little kittens who could
A
climb
buff
on the
Claw.
ceiling. What's that?
A buffed Claw, you know, like a muscle guy.
Yeah, right. And then a little kitten that could get into small spaces and could climb up walls and break gravity and get on the ceiling. And then later on in the game, Claw was going to learn how to control those transformations, and then you could just hop swap between them at any time for the last kind of third of the game.
This looks challenging.
You know, I've also had that idea for the Claw sequel. Like, I'm designing characters who can use those kind of buffs, and you would have to use the power-ups to properly fight against them.
That sounds cool.
So, alright, on to the next question. So, as you know, Claw was way ahead of its time on many aspects. And, you know, a little bit because of it was so ahead of its time, it was a little bit foreign to most of gamers. So, do you think Claw would have fared better if it was released today instead of 1997?
Well, when you say fared better, I assume you mean more players, more sales.
Yeah, it would have been
And I think
more of a commercial success.
yeah, a commercial success. So I attribute that primarily to guerrilla marketing that we attempted to do. This was at a time when Monolith was still deciding if we wanted to be a developer or if we wanted to get into publishing. And so we're like, well, why don't we try publishing? Let's just do it ourselves. That way, instead of paying someone else to do it, let's try it ourselves. And learned a very expensive lesson.
Yeah. Well,
Very expensive lesson that, you know, there's a reason for having publishers, and they do a lot. They bring a lot of value to a game's reach. And so I think that was a lot of what led to the commercial success that you see, you know, the amount of commercial success you see in Claw today. So having to do it all again, we would definitely work with a strong marketing and publishing team.
Challenging.
And so I think that would probably move the needle more than anything else. That said, I think today it's a little behind the curve in terms of its mechanics, but
Yeah.
it's still reasonable in terms of its look and feel. So we would have to update it if we released it today. Like I'd want to give it more, you know, I'd want to give it, you know, ledge grab and, you know, a lot of the other mechanics that are seen in platformers that are staple, that have become staple.
ledge grab.
But somewhere in the middle, like, you know, maybe 10 to 15 years ago with better marketing, I think it would have been a pretty big hit.
Definitely. And, you know, it was ahead, like, in so many aspects, like the multiplayer, in the level design. I mean, having its own editor to make your own custom levels, that was also ahead of its time.
Yep.
And you know, that's why I said, like, it's a little bit like Super Mario Maker, but, you know, 20 years earlier.
Yum.
Mhm.
Yummy.
That's one heck of an awesome. That's probably the best. Mario Maker is the best example of an accessible, players can create stuff quick and easy that I've ever seen.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would love to see the same kind of,
This will
you know, level design in Claw, where, you know, you can just randomly try any other player's
So far,
levels.
so good.
and
Yeah,
just
I love that.
Go through them.
This will be tough.
You know, we have to make do with what we have now, so we download the levels from from our own site, and then we can play them. But apart
Yeah,
from
that's
that,
the same with Grunts, the other game that uses the WAP engine. It's a top-down game. It uses the same engine that Claw uses, and the same editor.
Yeah, that's always a neat thing to have. But you know, of course, if you released it today, you could make it a lot more user-friendly than back then.
Yeah, user-generated content is exciting. It's always been exciting to me, and the game that our studio is working on now is going to have a small. We wanted to have an aspect of user-generated content, also where players can create stuff in it or for it. That's always been something that's been near and dear to me. And that means that you have to put a lot of love into the creation tools. Like, we at Monolith we did that anyways because we wanted it to be usable internally and we had a high quality bar. But it goes even higher when you want customers and players to be able to use those tools to create stuff. You can't just have them really crusty.
Yeah, I mean, back in those days, it was like so early for having a level editor that there wasn't enough precedent to have a good idea on what to do and what not to do for a level editor.
Right.
And speaking of which, you know, what kind of hardware limitations did you guys encounter that would have been greatly improved with today's technology?
That's a really good question. I think the programmers would have a better answer than I will. I'm trying to remember what the state of the graphics card and the CPU scene was in '97.
It was pretty low end, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
But,
so
apart from that, I mean, Claw was able to run on almost anything back in those days.
almost anything, yeah, and it ran high. Frame rate was really important to us, and our devs spent a lot of time optimizing things and little tricks that you don't have to do anymore to get to squeeze the most performance out of a game running on kind of old hardware. At the time, it was just crappy hardware, right? Like it was just that's all they had. But I know that we did there were a lot of tricks. Even the little entrance effect where the screen scrolls out, you know, that little transition where it goes,
yeah,
and it kind of goes into a circle. Even those had to use some tricks, if I recall, to not chunk the
So if you
frame
were to
rate.
do the same thing today, you could easily get like steady 60 FPS.
Oh, easy.
No problem.
Yeah, easily. And you know, the other thing I would probably change today is the camera. So the camera is just literally locked on, and it's just, you know,
Yeah.
every pixel you move, the camera moves. I would probably put a little ease in, ease out to that, so that, you know, it feels a little smoother. It feels chunky to me, you know, having played platformers for decades since this, right? Like, one of the things I like about other platformers like Rayman and things like that is just their camera is really smooth.
Yeah, if you look at cameras originally in most platformers, they're kind of instead of being hard locked on the character, they're a little bit they had a little bit of loose to them, so that the character moves and then the camera starts to fall.
And then it's like Mega Man was like that, which we took some inspiration from.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a ton of other stuff that would be greatly improved today. I mean, just the multiplayer aspect could be way ahead of what it was back then. I mean, if you want to do a multiplayer session today with the current game, it's a little complicated, to say the least. But you know, these days you can have a server up like nothing, and then just everybody gets on the same game. it's a lot smoother in the gamer aspect.
It's also a lot better for security. When you have a server running, the server can be authoritative, and it means that any mods or hacks that you try to do isn't going to affect anybody else, because the server's going to say, nope, you cannot do that. So it's better from that perspective too when you have a competitive multiplayer game.
So you talked about it a little bit earlier. So you started a company with Gobble recently. Is it Gobble or Gobble?
Gobble.
Gobble, yeah. The way it's written should be pronounced Gobble. So,
Yeah,
can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, so this gets a little bit into my tech background. Gave me a natural appreciation for blockchain technology, which I learned about in, let's say, 2015. I remember thinking, it started out by me thinking, games used to be $50. Then they were 99 cents. Now a lot of them are free. What's next? What's the next 20 years in games going to look like? Are we going to get paid to play games? What's that even going to look like?
Well, there's a lot of streamers that are currently getting paid to play games.
Well, yeah, but I mean every single player,
Yeah.
And so I just started thinking about that, and I read
So far,
in
so
2017 I read the Bitcoin and Ethereum tech papers, the white papers, and I remember the light bulb going on for me. Since I have a tech background, I understood what they are and how they work, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be the technology that brings about the next generation of video gaming experiences and business models and monetization in games. Like, there's so many things you can do with this, because it finally enables digital property ownership. We have a digital equivalent for everything we have in the real world today. We have movies, real world. You have Netflix, and shopping malls in the real world. You have Amazon, parks and social spaces in the real world. You have Discord and Twitter, stuff like that. And video arcades in the real world. You have Steam and Xbox and PlayStation stores. The one thing we didn't have until recently is property ownership, right? I own property in the real world, and I have a thing in my hand and I give it to you. That means I don't have it anymore, and you do. You have not been able to do that digitally, because when you have a digital something, you just right-click, save, copy, and now there's 2 copies of it, and which one's the original? You can't tell.
Yeah, they're trying to fix that a little bit with cloud technology, but it's still a little complicated to just transfer your saved property to other systems.
And I mean, the record that property is yours is sitting on some server somewhere, and if that server ever goes down, or the company who owns it goes out of business, that record is gone. So you need something that's immutable and public and will be around forever, and that's what the blockchain provides. So, it's one way to do digital property ownership that's unique. And what I saw was, man, fast forward 10 years from today, 2022, when you have really good games, and many of them let you own the stuff that you get in them. Like if you bought physical playing minis or playing cards or something like that, and you own those cards and you get to play with them, and when the game is done, you now have something that lives on that you can either get value back for, or you can use in some other way. Your achievements, your accolades, everything that all the time that you've spent, the hours and dollars in that game are not sunk, don't have to be sunk anymore. That's super exciting to me, and I feel like it's the next evolution of gaming. And so, when I used to look at the space, and when a lot of people look at blockchain games, they see grifting and Ponzi scams and pyramid schemes and a lot of greed and bad stuff. There's bad actors, there's greedy people, there's unsustainable economics. There's a lot of, I call it the dark side of blockchain, because people are still figuring it out. And I'm excited to explore the light side of blockchain games that are like let's show what a really fun game with true ownership, where you own all of your stuff, could do. What does that even mean? What implications does that have? So that's what we're building.
So, if I think about it, it could be a little more like if I'm taking a current game, where you wouldn't, for say, you buy a skin for a character, and you can, sell or trade that skin to somebody else because
exactly
own that skin.
That's the obvious kind of 1.0 version of it, and that's the part that caused everybody to index into financializing everything in games, and you can make money by playing it. And I think that sent gaming down a bad path. It's fine to have that stuff, but when you imply that everyone can make money playing, the motivation to play these games, which for decades has been because they're fun, changes to I'm making it all about the money, and gamers don't like that, developers don't like that, artists don't like that, so we have to move away from that, in my opinion. And so yes, that is a benefit of having blockchain technology and ownership, but I think that if the motivation for playing a game becomes anything more than it's really fun and I just like to own my stuff, it becomes a problem.
Yeah, of course. So that's what you're currently working on. So what are your plans for the future right now?
And that is the future. I think the next few years of gaming is going to show what the value of ownership even can be and what it means. Because when you say own your items to a regular gamer who is not a tech person, they'll say, I do own my items. I mean, like, I own my sword in World of Warcraft. What do you mean? And you're like, well, you don't really own it. And people will say, well, then I don't need to own it. Like, how does that benefit me in any way? So I think games need to show how ownership can make experiences better. That's what the next few years are going to be like for me.
All right. So, last question. Which would you prefer? A remake or a sequel? And if any of those would come to be made, would you like to be part of the project?
So far, so good.
Of course, I would love to work on the Claw IP again. Claw is near and dear to my heart. It was my first real game, and I'm pretty proud of it. It got highly rated, which most of the games that I've worked on have, fortunately. But Claw will always have a place in my heart for sure. And then not being able to make the sequel, I just have so many ideas that I would love to see come to life. So a remake or a remake would be easier, but a sequel would be more exciting. So I'm gonna go with the excitement and say, if I had to pick one, gun to my head, musket to my head, if you will, I would say a sequel would be more exciting.
Sequel first, remake later.
Sequel first, remake later. I mean, a remake would be easier though.
Yeah, remake is definitely
but I'd
easier.
I'd want to enhance it. If I did a remake, I'd want to throw in a couple more levels and give it some interesting mechanics.
Yeah, that's what remake means. If you do a remaster, you just make the exact same game, but a little updated. If you do a remake, it's like a little bit of a reimagining of what you wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, but the danger in a remake is people who have come to love the property. It's like a movie, doing a remake, and you're like, I can't believe they made some choices that not everybody agrees with. Whereas in a sequel, you've got a little bit more of an open canvas to evolve the IP, the characters, the story, the lore, and the mechanics.
Yeah, without stomping too much on the OGs that prefer things the way they were back then.
Right. So I would be more worried that we would mess something up with a remake, and I wouldn't want to soil the view of the OGs of the game. But I think you could do it. I think either one would work out and would be fun to work on.
All right. So we got a question from chat here. Which is your favorite boss from the game?
Let me run through all of them in my head here. Well, Omar was the most interesting from the design perspective because he had so many parts, right? And I'm a big fan of multi-stage bosses, and Omar was the one that really,
It was like the culmination of the bosses.
Yeah, it was right. Let's test every skill. Let's make sure let's give him multiple phases. And it was too hard, but I mean, Omar was probably my favorite. It was probably the most fun to work on.
All right. So you talked a little earlier about how Claw is dear to your heart. Well, I have something here, and you're gonna need your stream sound to hear that one. So I don't know if you watched this, but it's a fairly recent review from somebody who recently finished the game and bought the whole box from way back then, and he has an interesting take on this, so I will just put it up here. Can you hear?
Is it audio only, or are you gonna put visual on?
I'm gonna put the audio, and it should work. So let me see.
I've got it turned up, so.
All right. So I don't know why, but so the sound just went from my headphones to the speakers, but that's all right. So tell me if you hear this properly.
Shadows of Light. But yeah, finding a complete package of this game physically and actually managing to beat it took me nearly a decade to accomplish both. And probably because the sheer amount of happiness I felt was like overbearing and lasted weeks, maybe even months, and every time I revisit this game or pick up the box and look at it, I feel that same overbearing sense of happiness as I did around then. Like it's almost therapeutic to me, it's weird. I don't think I can say any other game gives me that same sense of happiness when I look at the box or I beat it. Not even the rarer copies that I mentioned, except for maybe hacks, and not even my favorite game of all time, Blood, can do that, which is really saying something, I think. This is a game that I just hold very close and dear to my heart. I have been dragging this on for a long time, I'm sorry. I should...
And that's it. So...
That's awesome.
Yeah, it resumes a little bit how we all feel when we play Claw. Like we always come back to it, and then we feel that elated and happy feeling that it seems like no other game can reproduce the same feeling. It's not that much nostalgia because some players they play it way later and they still feel that same feeling. So I mean, for me, it's also special, of course. Who it wouldn't be special for me if I didn't play over it like 12,000 times. I mean, it's obvious that it's special for me, but it's the same feeling for, I mean, almost everybody who plays this game, and that's why there's over 2,300 people joining our Discord, and there's always people coming in every day and saying hi. Love this game, played as a kid. It's a really special game. I just want to say to you and to the team, thank you for making Claw and being part of our lives like that, and coming back 25 years later just to talk a little bit about it. That's really great.
Man, let me tell you that what you just played and what you just said is literally the dream and the motivation for I can't say everybody, but most people in video game who make games, right? Because gaming does not pay as much as a career as a lot of other careers do, right? So you're kind of you're doing games because you love making games, and it's kind of for the art. And why games instead of something else? Because you're trying to bring entertainment to people, and you want people to have a good time, and you want them to enjoy the game. And I mean, there's no better praise than what you just said, and what the audio file you just shared. Like that hits you right in the feels. And a lot of people in games, you know, there's a lot of egos. They get, you know, they're like, yeah, we delivered a good game, and people are like, this is the best game I've ever played, and they're like, thanks man, appreciate it bro. And like, that's just, you know, it hits different for me. You know, like, I don't know, I'm speechless a little bit. I'm trying to think of something, you know, profound to say, but really, I just, from the bottom of my heart, that means so much to me to hear you. And I'm not sure who the person was in the audio file you played, but I mean, that's like pure fulfillment. Like, that is why we do what we do in games, for that, hoping to someday get a reaction like that. And so it was awesome to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, that's no problem. Before you go, we got another question in chat. He says, "Why is Gabriel throwable?" Like, because when you get up on the ship and you grab him, the legs don't appear, and you can just throw him in the water and he dies instantly.
I'm pretty sure that was a bug.
You simply like didn't expect anyone to reach him.
Yeah, I'm not. I think that it just got that flag didn't get turned off or something. We missed it in testing.
Yeah, because
And I'm not sure if you heard the story of the most amusing bug in Claw. If I can tell you this one, it's on, I think it might. I'm not sure if it was on my website. Was the bounce. So when you kill an enemy, they arc up and it goes, and then they fly off and splash into the water, right?
Yeah.
We had that effect in there. We've had that from the very, very beginning. And there was this time where while the character was arcing up and flying, if you walked forward and struck with your sword again, you could hit him again and it would bounce. And so I showed that to the programmer. I'm like, check this out. You can bounce the guy all the way across the screen. And he said, oh, sorry, I forgot to turn off his the flag that allows him to be collidable with your sword. After you kill him, when he dies, we should get rid of that. And I'm like, he's like, that's a bug, I'll fix it. And I'm like, no, my God, don't fix that. It is the coolest thing that you can bounce the enemies across the screen. And he's like, no, that's totally not supposed to be there. It's a bug, it's bad, and I didn't mean it, I'm sorry. And I had to talk to him for like 20 minutes to convince him that it's actually should be a feature instead of a bug. And he should leave it in. And not only should he leave it in, but we should consider like a bounce counter, and like how many times could you bounce them across the screen? And we left it in. And that was it's my best story of how a bug became a feature in a video game ever.
Yeah, that's really funny.
So good.
And yeah, but even for Gabriel, I mean, even if you don't use a double jump or a glitch to reach him, you can still, through the way the level is designed, you can, you know, grab the catnip from the secret at the top of the mast, and then you still have enough time to reach him with the catnip, and then even if you don't skip the cutscene, you can jump over him. And I guess since you just designed the boss fight, maybe you didn't know that there was this possibility, or that you know, I mean, the three bosses prior to Gabriel can be thrown, so maybe that the other bosses they can't. It was turned off, but for Gabriel to be thrown in the water with no legs, it came to be like a little bit of a meme, because you know, the story is that if you grab him and you throw him in the water, he dies because he has no legs and he can't swim.
He can't swim. Yeah, I think the QA team missed the fact that you could bring the power up into the boss, so we were just testing the boss battle, and so that was definitely overlooked because he didn't have legs.
So,
All right. Well,
thanks for coming
thanks for
over
having
and
me.
talking about Claw,
Yeah.
and really cool of you to accept my invitation, and hopefully we can get a few more devs in the stream, talk to them a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you know, we're all just a Discord ping away these days, so feel free to reach out if you have any other cool stuff, ideas, or exciting things.
All right.
Always happy to chat about Claw or geek out about games.
All right. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Hey, you too. Take it easy, guys.